I faced unfair treatment my entire life because of my favored sister, who even tried to steal the spotlight at my wedding. I finally got my revenge on that day. My parents always preferred my sister, and their bias was blatant. If she pointed fingers at me, they'd take her side and discipline me. But if I had solid proof against her, they'd give her a mild scolding and still find a way to reprimand me. My birthday cakes were always her favorite flavor, despite my parents knowing I disliked it. They showered her with more gifts and took us to places she chose, even when the occasion was meant to be about me. My sister grew up entitled and treated me like her emotional punching bag. Initially, she mostly ignored me, but things worsened in our teenage years. She lost all her friends and her behavior spiraled. Did her friends move away or abandon her because of her attitude? I'm not sure, as we were never close. My parents only bragged about her successes and never mentioned her struggles, while they constantly mocked my shortcomings. I only realized she had no friends because we attended the same school, and I noticed she was alone. Meanwhile, I had a decent social circle. When my sister saw this, she shifted from occasionally targeting me to relentlessly trying to tear me down. She began accusing me and my friends of all sorts of things. My parents banned me from hanging out with anyone, claiming my sister said they were bad influences, or asking why I didn't want to spend time with family like she did. My extended family saved me from total isolation. Most lived in our hometown, and I bonded well with my cousins despite age gaps. At one family event, they invited me to something. I can't recall what, and I sadly said I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. When they asked why, my younger self bluntly explained it was because my sister had no friends, so I wasn't allowed any either. This reached the adults, who confronted my parents. I was scolded for lying and grounded for a month, but afterward they eased up slightly, so it felt worth it. My sister switched schools, likely because the embarrassment of our family knowing her social status was too much. She demanded a new school, and my parents complied, even though it was more expensive due to the distance. She made friends there, but her vendetta against me persisted. She relished the power to torment me, especially after I exposed her lack of friends to the family. Life remained tough. Her new friends would come over and harass me, which my parents dismissed as harmless teasing. I never invited friends over because my parents were terrible hosts, or my sister would accuse them of stealing, and my parents always believed her. I grew close to my cousins, though, as my parents didn't dare mistreat family. Then I got my first boyfriend. I avoided bringing him home, but my parents insisted. At one point, he told me my sister had flirted with him. She approached him in revealing clothes, fluttered her eyes, and badmouthed me while praising herself. Annoyed, he came to find me. Naturally, my sister told my parents a different story, that my boyfriend flirted with her, but she refused him out of loyalty to me. Guess who they believed? My boyfriend wasn't flawless, but I trusted him instantly, partly out of spite. As a teen enduring constant unfairness, I was bitter and despised my sister as much as she despised me to address appearances, since it hasn't come up yet. My parents were heavyset and showed affection through food, offering more portions, buying treats, and so on. My sister was also heavyset, while I stayed slim, largely because punishments often meant no snacks or treats for me. Looks aside, personality matters most. My sister was rude and entitled, never learning to earn anything since my parents always gave in to her demands. Even her flirting was clumsy because of this. As a self-conscious teen, I didn't believe my boyfriend would cheat on me with her. My parents, however, banned me from seeing such a terrible boy. I tried continuing the relationship secretly, but it was too difficult and fell apart. I later had another boyfriend, but my sister accused him of flirting with her too when he rejected her advances. My parents believed her again, concluding I had poor judgment in choosing partners. That relationship also crumbled under the strain. In high school, I gained a reputation as a flirt because I was fine with casual makeouts but avoided committed relationships. Thankfully, this never reached my sister or parents. During this time, my sister brought home one boyfriend, whom my parents paraded proudly, constantly comparing him to my bad choices. When he stopped coming around, they suddenly labeled him a deceitful jerk who fooled my sister. The unequal treatment persisted. She had more spending money and lenient curfews, free to go wherever, whenever, while I was restricted. If I pointed out the disparity, they'd claim it was because she was older. When I reached her age, the rules didn't change, and they cited my untrustworthy judgment, using her accusations against my friends and boyfriends as evidence. Time passed, and my sister graduated high school. She was accepted into a mediocre college with no scholarship. Since my parents only shared her achievements, I don't know which schools she applied to or how many rejected her. I did know her grades were poor, as we'd celebrate her rare Bs, while my consistently good grades were ignored, deemed unremarkable. My parents made a huge fuss over her college acceptance and promised to cover all her expenses. I was relieved she'd be leaving, though it didn't make my life easier. She returned home often, and my things would go missing or she'd stir up new trouble. My curfews remained strict. As my own graduation approached, my mom told me that since they were funding my sister's college, they couldn't afford mine. They suggested I work after graduation and wait until my sister finished college to see if they could help me later. If I stayed home, I'd need to pay for my expenses, bills, and rent. I mentioned student loans, but my mom dismissed the idea, saying they'd decide if a college was worth my taking on debt, citing my poor judgment. I'm not sure how they'd stop me, but I didn't press. Scholarships weren't discussed, as they didn't know my grades and never believed in me anyway. I calmly agreed, which surprised my mom. She prodded for a reaction, perhaps hoping for a tantrum to justify denying me support, but I stayed composed. My dad tried the same, but I remained unemotional after years of their unfair parenting. I had no expectations for their support. I'd long known they'd find excuses to avoid funding my education. With limited social outlets due to their restrictions, I had plenty of time to study, seeing college as my escape. I worked hard and earned a full scholarship to a respectable college, not Ivy League, but a solid program. Knowing my sister would try to sabotage me through my parents, I announced my achievement on social media while telling them, even thanking them publicly. This ensured they couldn't stop me without explaining to the family. At first, they bragged about my success, but my sister likely influenced them, and they questioned if I should go, hinting she was struggling in college and implying I'd fare worse. I stood firm. They weren't pleased but couldn't intervene. College was my salvation. I began to find happiness. I kept minimal contact with my parents, visiting only for holidays, and since they wouldn't pay for anything, I could limit visits citing finances. I avoided introducing boyfriends to them. My sister dropped out of college, evident from the lack of fanfare, and moved back home, paying no bills or rent, which my parents justified as different. She got a job at my mom's company, likely through connections, and they presented it as a triumph. Around this time, I met my husband. Unlike me, a passive doormat who dwells on what I wish I'd said, he's quick to act and confront. He thrives on resolving drama and doesn't forgive slights easily. If he doesn't respond immediately, he's likely planning something bigger. He encouraged me to share this story, though he felt our revenge wasn't extreme enough for some platforms. Our personalities differ, but I admired his boldness, which complemented my inability to stand up for myself. We decided to marry, prioritizing a dream European honeymoon over an elaborate ceremony due to budget constraints. Since his family was scattered and mine was mostly in my hometown, we chose to wed there, with flexibility to plan during weekend visits. We sent engagement announcements and save-the-date cards. My parents demanded to meet my fiancée. I hesitated, softened by distance and hoping they'd changed, but my husband was thrilled. He'd prepared for this, even buying a discreet recorder to capture their behavior. He fantasized about rebuffing my sister's advances and sharing the recording with family. He went alone, returning ecstatic. He explained that instead of flirting, my parents and sister proposed that my sister walk down the aisle at my wedding in a wedding dress, claiming it was unfair for the younger sibling to marry first. They wanted her to have the experience complete with photos and a cake at my venue. My husband takes over here. Hey, vengeful husband here. I'm a fan of epic comeuppance, and when my fiancée was wronged, I was livid. Their audacious plan stunned me, but I played along, saying I'd discuss it with her and left before revealing my intentions. Back to me. My husband's recording confirmed their plan to make my wedding about my sister. The distance had dulled my perception of their cruelty, but his enthusiasm for revenge kept me grounded. We brainstormed ways to turn the tables, from outlandish schemes to practical ones. We consulted his level-headed brother, who cautioned against risky ideas like giving a fake venue address, as they could lead to legal trouble. We settled on a simpler plan, agree to their idea but hire security to block my sister. My husband returned to my parents, saying I'd likely go along if surprised publicly, especially if they contributed financially, as gratitude would silence me. He cleverly used their words, claiming I was controlling due to past bad boyfriends, insisting all discussions about their plan be in person to avoid a paper trail. My sister was overjoyed, and my parents agreed for months. We deceived them. They thought they were manipulating me, but we milked their contributions. They wanted control over details like music and colors, but my husband convinced them to let me choose to keep me compliant. Since we didn't care much about the ceremony, we let them think they had input. We'd select cheaper options for food, drinks, or flowers, then have my husband show my sister the choices, lamenting we couldn't afford better. She'd demand my parents pay for the best, and they'd assure me they'd cover it. For the dress, they pushed one I disliked. We considered agreeing and ignoring it, but when my mom texted about it, we stood firm. My sister suggested ruining my chosen dress, and my husband pretended to agree. We reinforced the no-text rule by having me respond to my sister's messages to him, cementing the controlling narrative. I found it hilarious to be portrayed as assertive, given my doormat nature, and encouraged his antics. My sister flirted with him, but he played conflicted to maintain the ruse. We kept security a secret. Ultimately, we had a lavish wedding we barely paid for, calling it compensation for my parents' emotional damage. My husband enjoyed the deception more than wedding planning, eagerly spending weekends with my parents to discuss details. On the wedding day, their plan was to have my sister arrive late, walk down the aisle before me, and surprise me too late to react. My husband showed them fabric scraps from my dress alterations, claiming he'd ruined it, then left to calm me down. We hid our real security, a burly guard, until guests were seated, initially using a woman checking names. We instructed the guard to bar my sister and tipped generously for discretion as guests arrived. My dad signaled to start the ceremony, thinking my sister was minutes away. My bridesmaids, prepped to follow his cue, began without checking with me. A friend, in on the plan and eager for drama, texted me to prepare. As the bridal march played, I entered. My dad was stunned, looking for my sister, who wasn't there. His phone rang. It was her. He mumbled about an issue and left me. I tearfully told our friend he'd said it wasn't supposed to be me, as planned to vilify him. She loudly questioned this, ensuring guests heard, then ran to stall by confronting security. My mom soon left too. My husband's dad, prewarned, rushed to escort me. Amid whispers, I reached my husband, who joked about my Oscar-worthy tears and vowed to handle my parents. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. My parents didn't return. Guests came and went, but no one told me why. My husband left briefly, returning with a stormy expression, whispering he had to hide to avoid grinning. From friends, family, and the guard, we learned my sister arrived in a wedding dress but was denied entry, told she must be at the wrong venue. My dad threatened police, but the guard offered to call them as he was just doing his job. Our friend escalated the chaos, yelling at my sister. As more guests witnessed, my parents and sister faced outrage for their plan. They blamed my husband, but he denied everything, demanding proof they couldn't provide. With only verbal claims and no texts, their story fell apart. My sister had a tantrum, collapsing and kicking like a child. My dad nearly attacked my husband but was restrained. They were forced to leave, my dad dragging my sister off the ground. No one told me during the reception, likely to spare me, and guests were extra kind, perhaps due to the lavish food and drinks. We enjoyed ourselves immensely. My husband's angry facade quickly gave way to smiles. We left for our honeymoon, rejecting my parents' offer to pay for tickets to avoid sabotage. They've since tried contacting me, but my husband insisted on written communication. My sister sent unhinged messages, blaming me for her humiliation, calling my husband a deceitful manipulator. He wants to frame this, and claiming he'd cheat even with her. My husband sent screenshots of her messages, my parents' demands, and their threats to our family group chat, pleading for help to stop their harassment and jokingly warning they might claim he agreed to an affair with my sister. Our family promised to handle it, and we've had peace since. My husband, slightly disappointed my sister didn't escalate further for another showdown. While I'd have preferred a loving family at my wedding, thwarting their plan and turning the tables felt incredible after years of mistreatment. Why did they treat me this way? I've wondered forever and still don't know. When I asked as a child, they denied favoritism and punished me for being spoiled, so I stopped asking. My theory is I was an unplanned pregnancy. My sister was a long-awaited miracle child, but with our small age gap, they likely didn't expect another so soon and weren't prepared. Financial strain and resentment may have followed, but it's just a guess. Ultimately, their reasons don't justify their actions. We suspect my sister's tantrum over my marrying first prompted their absurd proposal, hoping I'd refuse so they could avoid paying while appeasing her. My husband's acceptance trapped them. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Stay tuned for more real-life stories, get more experiences.